The 2018 Stanley Cup Finals are all set. We're going to have the Vegas Golden Knights battling the Washington Capitals for the Stanley Cup. In today's video, we're going to preview the series and I'll give you my predictions on who's going to win. And that's coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams. So if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So we're just about ready to get underway with the Stanley Cup Finals. We're only a few days away from puck drop on Game 1, which will be held in Vegas. Who would have thought at the beginning of the year, in the inaugural season of the Vegas Golden Knights, that they would be hosting Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals? It's just an absolutely incredible story we've had with the Golden Knights all season long. They continue to defy the odds and surpass everybody's expectations, and by far the biggest story of the year, and might very well be one of the biggest, if not the biggest story, really in a long time, not just in hockey, but in sports in general here. Obviously, this is also a big feat for the Washington Capitals to make it this far. Obviously, the great 8 Alex Ovechkin has been one of the greatest goal scorers of his generation. You could probably make an argument that he just might be the greatest goal scorer of all time, or certainly one of the top couple for sure. And with everything he's accomplished in his career, he's yet to get that elusive Stanley Cup. And throughout this whole time, this is the first time he's been to the finals. So this is obviously a big accomplishment itself. But I'm sure he won't be completely satisfied until he can hoist that cup over his head and say he's a Stanley Cup champion. So we have 2 great storylines going here. And one of the big ones, another storyline that kind of connects the two, is George McPhee. Obviously, George McPhee is the general manager for the Vegas Golden Knights. And he was the general manager for the Washington Capitals for a long time, so he certainly has a major impact on the current roster of the Capitals. It's only been a couple of years since he's been removed from that position before he joined Vegas, so obviously a lot of the players that are on that roster, he either had a hand in drafting, trading for, signing as free agents. Obviously there's been some, fairly minor moves in the last couple of years by the new GM, Brian McClellan, but really a big chunk of that team was put together by George McPhee. Obviously, he was the architect of the Vegas Golden Knights through the expansion draft and the entry draft and trades and free agency all summer long. So, I mean, he's obviously done a great job. In either way, he probably should get some recognition for the Stanley Cup winner, regardless of who wins, considering he's had such a large hand in building both franchises to the point where they are right now. Now, I guess if you look back at the regular season, I know the games played between these two teams probably don't mean a whole lot, but Vegas did win both games against the Capitals during the regular season. In fact, Marc-Andre Fleury accomplished his first shutout as a member of the Golden Knights during the first game of the year against the Capitals. So obviously there was only played twice. Things were quite a bit different then. Obviously they've gone through some playoff wars here. We're into the finals. So those are games that they played back then really don't mean a whole lot. But if it is any indication, Vegas did do well against the Capitals earlier this season. Now, there's certainly some keys here that we can focus on to determine who's going to win. One, we're going to have a goaltending battle between Fleury and Holtby. We're going to take a look at the top scorers for Washington versus the top scorers for the Golden Knights. Obviously, special teams is going to play a big role here as well. So let's dive in and I'll take a look at each aspect of the game, give you my thoughts on which team has the edge, and then at the end here, I'll give you my prediction on who I think is going to hoist the Stanley Cup this summer. So let's jump in here first and let's take a look at their offensive teams. Now both teams, if you take a look here at the numbers for how their top players have performed, the Washington Capitals players certainly have more points, but you also have to factor in that they've played more games. The Vegas Golden Knights have gotten where they are in 4 fewer games than the Capitals. They've been able to wrap up their series much sooner, and therefore they've gotten a lot more rest and time to recuperate between each series. You could certainly say Vegas is probably the team of the two that's more well rested and healthier as well. There's certainly some guys on the Capitals that are banged up, and thankfully for them, they are getting a bit of a break between the conference final and the Stanley Cup final. But at the end of the day here, Vegas is still the healthier team and the more well-rested team for sure. Now, if you take a look, like we said, about the top guys, let's take a look at the stats of how some of their top offensive players have been performing so far in the playoffs. Now, the leading scorer right now for the Capitals is Evgeny Kuznetsov. He's put up 24 points in 19 games. He has been absolutely tremendous. for the Capitals. Certainly a contender for the Conn Smythe Trophy for sure. Alex Ovechkin's right up there as well. He has 22 points in 19 games. Nicholas Backstrom, who has missed 4 games due to injury, is still averaging over a point per game in the playoffs. He has 16 points in 15 games. John Carlson, obviously the big offensive defenseman on the back end for the Capitals, also has 16 points, but he's played 19 games. And then you got TJ Oshie, who's got 15 points in 19 games for the Capitals as well. So their top guys have performed relatively well and have come through in a lot of the big moments when necessary for the Capitals as well. So now let's take a look at the Golden Knights. We've got Jonathan Marchessault leading the way. He's got 18 points in 15 games. You got Riley Smith, who has 16 points in 15 games. You've got Wild Bill Karlsson has 13 points in 15 games. And the next 2 leading scorers are Alex Tuch and James Neal, both who have 9 points in 15 games. So if you take a look at the two, I think Washington, amongst their top 6, probably has a little bit more balanced attack right now as far as who's been getting on the board. Vegas is getting more from their top line. Their second, third, and fourth lines have all been contributing, though. The Golden Knights have been able to roll 4 lines and are getting big moments and key contributions from all those lines. They're just not always on the score sheet, but they have been getting some big moments. Like, for example, the Western Conference clinching goal was scored by Ryan Reeves, who's primarily a 4th-line player. So when you get guys like Ryan Reeves scoring major goals to get you onto the Stanley Cup Finals, it just goes to show how well the depth players have been contributing for the Vegas Golden Knights. They've had big plays from different guys in each series. Like the first series, we saw Braden McNabb score the series clinching goal against his former team, the LA Kings. You know, we had Ryan Reeves score the conference final clinching goal against the Winnipeg Jets. So they're getting scoring from all over the place. So they're a little bit more spread out, whereas the Caps are really relying heavily on their top 6. But they performed well, and even John Carlson on the back end as well. The Capitals have probably been getting more offense from their D if you take a look at these stats as well. Obviously, another big factor here is going to be the goaltending battle. Marc-Andre Fleury versus Braden Holtby. Now, I'm going to start with Holtby here because I think he's been tremendous in the playoffs, and he's finished his last 2 games to close out the Eastern Conference Final with back-to-back shutouts, which is incredibly impressive. Holtby has a 2.04 goals against average, which is pretty stingy. He has 2 shutouts included in there and a .924 save percentage. Those are some pretty fantastic numbers for playoff hockey. He's getting the job done. He's won 12 games, going for to play the Stanley Cup. The sad part is that Marc-Andre Fleury's stats absolutely blow this one out of the water. Fleury has been lights out in these playoffs, and he's going to be a tough goalie to out-battle here. So Holtby's got his work cut out for him. Now let's take a look at Fleury's stats. He's got an even stingier goals against, a 1.68. He's got 4 shutouts and has a .947 save percentage. That's absolutely phenomenal. At this rate, you'd probably say even if Washington were to win, that Fleury would probably win the Conn Smythe. I think he's been by far the top player in the playoffs amongst all the players so far, and he certainly stands an excellent shot at winning the Conn Smythe regardless of the outcome. So as much as Braden Holtby has outperformed the other goalies he's been up against in the other 3 series, he's going to have his work cut out for him to outperform Fleury if Fleury keeps it up. If Fleury's play stays the same, you have to give the edge and goal to the Golden Knights. Based on offense before, like I said, you would theoretically give an edge to the Capitals because they have more guys producing at a higher rate. But here's the thing that I'll caution you is the Vegas Golden Knights have ran into some pretty offensive teams in the playoffs. Look at the Winnipeg Jets in the last round. They really figured out how to play, especially their penalty kill as well. They took away the Jets' power play. They took away their options. They had Scheifele and Laine, who are their 1-2 options. I mean, the way the Jets like to set up their power play is they usually have Scheifele in the slot and they have Laine set up on the face-off circle, whereas Patton slap shot. And they figured out how to take away both of those options. So when you have options A, B, C, D, like they had A and B, 1 and 2 options taken away all the time, and the Jets just could not get going, and they just couldn't get adjusted. And they say the Golden Knights probably outcoached them in a way and figured out how to slow down their juggernaut of an offense. And really, you could probably make an argument that Washington is built similarly to the Winnipeg Jets as far as their top 6 forwards go. They have a lot of similarities, in my opinion. In a Vegas shut down Winnipeg, they can shut down the Capitals as well. So the Capitals are going to have to be creative and figure out some ways and kind of change things up and change up their looks on the power play and when they're set up in the zone so that they can actually get some clean looks if they can, because otherwise Vegas is going to be very tough to break through and get the pucks on net. I mean, as much as Fleury's been lights out, the rest of the team in front of them has been played well, very positionally sound, so that there's not as many grade A opportunities getting through. But when they're getting through, he's shutting them down. So the Capitals are certainly going to have their work cut out for them for sure. Now, obviously, one thing that's a bit of a factor when it comes to these big games is experience. For both of these franchises, neither one of them as a franchise really have experience dealing with this. They're both in uncharted waters here. Both of them are in a Stanley Cup final. The Vegas are the first time ever, the Capitals' first time in 20 years, so they don't have any players from their last trip. Another big factor here in this series, which hasn't been a huge factor in the playoffs, is going to be home ice advantage. We've seen a lot of teams win some big games on the road. Many series, home ice has not really been a factor at all. But really, if there's one team that's taken advantage of home ice more than any other in the playoffs, it's been Vegas, really. I think the Vegas Golden Knights having the home ice advantage actually will play to be a role here in this series. So we'll see how Washington can do in the first 2 games on the road. I would not want to be the Capitals if they happen to lose both games in Vegas, going home down 0-2 against this team in the Stanley Cup Finals for sure. So to summarize the main points of this series, obviously goaltending is going to be huge. Right now I give an edge to Vegas because Fleury has been lights out, and as much as Holtby's been really solid as well, he's going to have his work cut out for him to outperform Marc-Andre Fleury. If you have to take a look at the D-core, I would give an advantage to Washington when it comes to producing offense from the back end. Overall, I think Vegas's D-core has played pretty well. They've gotten the job done, but I do like Washington's D-core a little bit better, so I think there's a bit of an advantage there. Up front, though, like I said, the Vegas Golden Knights really shut down the Winnipeg Jets, so if they can do the same thing to Washington, then which is a very similar built team in my opinion, then I think they're going to have an edge there as well. My bold prediction for the 2018 Stanley Cup is I'm picking the Vegas Golden Knights to win the Stanley Cup in their inaugural season here in the NHL. It's going to be quite a story. It's going to be a major feat no matter who lifts that cup as the Stanley Cup winner. I think both teams really at this point deserve it. They've been having a tremendous playoff. They've, like I said, great stories all around. I'd love it. At the same time, you know, whether or not Vegas can get it done in their first season or whether Ovechkin can hoist that cup finally and be a Stanley Cup champion, either way, they both make for great moments, great stories, and I'll technically be happy with either outcome. I've bet against Vegas too many times during these playoffs and they keep proving me wrong, and I just can't go there again. So I'm picking the Vegas Golden Knights to win this series, and I'm going to say they win it in 6 games. If you're new to the channel, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams. There's plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you're new, hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, make sure you smash that like button as well. I'd really appreciate it if you did. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.